Rejoice in the freedom from slavery. Rejoice in 1, forgiveness of sin, 2, fullness of security, and 3, freedom from slavery. It's not like we can be happy that we're forgiven in the past or that we're going to have fullness of assurance for the future. No, we can have freedom from slavery now. Now. Whatever you're entangled in, and you don't want to be entangled in it, you can have victory and you can rejoice because you are freed from sin's slavery. In Christ, we can walk in these promises of the paths of promise and blessing, and we can spread that as we live that out before others because you don't have to sin anymore. In Christ, you're free to obey, free to walk in newness of life, free because listen, the world would say, and maybe your flesh would tell you, freedom, I just want to do whatever I want to do. That's freedom. No, freedom is not being able to chase any desire or lust that will control you because it will just make you its slave. The world calls it addiction, right? It'll just trap you in. It'll draw you in, and you feel like you got to go back to it, and you got to go back to it, and you got to go back to it. Your phone does that with you some, right? And you got to look at it again. That's not freedom. That's slavery. You're controlled by something. True freedom is being able to enjoy what God has made you for. Enjoy obeying the good design of God and the blessings of His grace. True freedom is to be able to walk in His ways, and God gives that true freedom by the new birth, by the new life that comes in Christ. And so we're free. When John 10, Jesus said, I want them to have abundant life. Well, freedom is I get to choose that. I get to pursue that. I get to live that out. And so you might say, how? Verses 11 to 13. He's declared this as so, and then look at verses 11 to 13. Even so, consider yourselves to be dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body, so that you obey its lust. And do not go on presenting the members of your body to sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to God. Here's a perfect example of how God can promise something. He can declare something to be true, and yet we must act on that by faith. We must live on that by faith. God has not saved people for us to wallow in sin and never have any victory, never know how to change. No, He has saved us and given us freedom in Christ with power to change. But you can't just hear that and say, all right, I got power to change. All right. Where's the fairy dust sprinkling down from heaven to make me change? I mean, like I've got power to change, right? No. You must count that to be true. He says, consider yourself. He says, take that truth that your old man is dead and you are alive and you don't have to live that slavery anymore. Count that to be true. Believe in that way. Trust what God has promised. Trust what He has said. And then do something else. Present your bodies, present your minds, present yourself to God as up to Him to serve Him, and don't present yourself to what you used to. We must do something with God's promises. You can't say, I believe that and not act on it. We must act by faith to apply this victory that He has given. And so that's why He says, consider yourselves dead to sin. Right? Don't go on presenting the members of your body as instruments of unrighteousness. Don't do that anymore. Say, hey, I know Christ. I don't have to do that anymore. I can choose to present my members to God for as a slave of righteousness. And we approach that by grace. We approach that saying, God, You've promised this. You are gracious. Will You work it into my life? Will You move that way into my life? You don't hear that and go, well, that's what the law says, so I guess I ought to try. Maybe I can get better. And maybe I'll feel better if I can get better. And then maybe I'll get better. No, he says you're not under law, you're under grace, verses 14 and 15. And under grace, we're in this relationship where we trust what he's promised and we wait for him to give. And he gives not because we're doing well. What does grace mean? Undeserved favor, unmerited blessing. And so we're walking in grace and we say, I'm going to give myself, I'm going to trust what he's promised, I'm going to give myself to that. I'm going to say, God, I'm not good at this. I'm not very good at this. But you promised grace, and so here I go. Would you pour that out? And then when he does, you say, thanks. And when he doesn't, you get bitter. No. Right? You say, hey, I'm going to go back to his promise, and my motives are maybe wrong. I want to examine that. I'm going to pursue him again. He answers, and it's only this much. And you think, I wanted this much. Well, you didn't deserve it anyway. It's grace. Right? And so you're thankful.